Coulthard to the right, Hill to the left. And away they go this time. Someone else has stalled. It's another Arrows. And now, down towards us they come. Coulthard is in the lead. Michael Schumacher is ahead. So's Irvine. Damon Hill has dropped back to 4th position with Johnny Herbert in 5th position. So a terrible start for Damon Hill. An excellent start for both David Coulthard and Michael Schumacher. And with Eddie Irvine in front of Hill, Hill has got to get past Irvine in the Jordan before he can tackle Schumacher and Coulthard. And first of all, he's got to catch him. And that is Taki Inui in the other Arrows. So Max Papis started the problem, and then Roberto Moreno stalled. Then Taki Inui, but tiptoeing round on this first lap, not knowing what the conditions are really like at racing speed. David Coulthard has already got a respectable gap between himself and Schumacher, who is pulling away from Irvine. Hill is in 4th position, and Coulthard, Schumacher. Hill having a look at Eddie Irvine. He wants to get past quickly. That's Johnny Herbert. Lacey is ahead of Berger, who has been passed by Frentzen. So there have been quite a lot of position changes. And the Ferraris, of course, are handicapped to some extent in the opening stages of this race as it dries out. We all hope, because they are on slick tyres. And as we know, the top 3 are on wets. And Damon Hill goes past Eddie Irvine up into 3rd position. So all is not lost as far as Hill is concerned. Rubens Barrichello there, right behind Jean Alesi, coming through to complete lap 1, and Schumacher is right up now with David Coulthard, race leader. Big gap to Damon Hill, 3rd, Eddie Irvine 4th, Johnny Herbert 5th, Jean Alesi 6th, Barrichello is 7th, Frentzen is 8th, Berger is 9th, and through they go now on towards that slow 65 mile an hour hairpin at the end of the circuit, and the battle is joined between the man who is leading the World Championship, Michael Schumacher, and David Coulthard, who won in Portugal.
Well, it's just so very, very tricky to get these Formula One cars off the line in damp, slippery conditions, because with 700 horsepower and just 550 kilos, they have a tremendous excess of power over grip, and it very, very much is a matter of feeding in the power carefully. There's no way that you can just floor the throttle, because you simply sit there with loads of wheel spin. However, big disappointment for Damon Hill, but I must admit I was a bit worried that Eddie Irvine, in his understandable quest to keep ahead, would be rather more difficult to get by than he was, but clearly Hill was in no mood to be held up by Irvine. And let's keep a look now, because on that first lap, at the end of that first lap, Schumacher was half a second behind Coulthard, and that's about what we've got now. But Damon Hill was 3.8 seconds. He lost over 3 seconds to Schumacher on that first lap. But Ferrari doing a good job there on their slicks. McLaren having a dismal time, working back from 9th and 10th on the grid to 15th for Hakkinen and 16th for Blundell. Of course, McLaren being on slicks like Ferrari.
And the madness of these rockets that are being fired really infuriates me. There's always a danger that one of them will hit a driver, but we're coming through to the end of lap 2 now. Damon Hill was 4.4 seconds behind the leaders. Coulthard goes across the line. Schumacher tucked up under his rear wing almost. Damon Hill is still in 3rd position, and the gap is down to 3.2 seconds. So Damon Hill has taken a second out of the lead of the first 2 in that 1 lap. And if he can keep this up, he's going to be with them very quickly. I remind you that the Williams have got the new rear suspension and the new gearbox, and they certainly handle better and go quicker than the Benettons on that, or they have done up to this point. So, lap 3, you can see the 2 leaders, David Coulthard and Michael Schumacher. Now you see Damon Hill. Next you will see, no you won't, but it's Eddie Irvine. Johnny Herbert is 5th, Jean Alesi is 6th, Rubens Barrichello is 7th, and Heinz-Harald Frentzen is 8th in the Sauber. Hill.
Now, if any of these cars are going to make 2 stops, and that's the most that anyone's going to do here for fuel, it won't be for another 20 laps. So we can sit back and watch 20 laps of hard racing. We know that the first 3, in fact the first 4, 5 are all on wet weather tyres. Alesi is the first slick runner in 6th, with then Berger back in 9th. Alesi really going tremendously well, making good use of his slick tyres in these difficult situations. And I would think at the moment this is a gamble that could pay off for Alesi. They may well be going for a one-stop strategy, and he really is not losing out much at all. But Coulthard really being pressurised hard by Michael Schumacher, and throughout the qualifying and practice sessions I would have said that Schumacher had a bit of a job trying to hang on to Coulthard, but he's all over him now. And one does wonder, just maybe, Benetton are looking at 2 stops, Williams at 1 stop. That would certainly be a scenario consistent with Schumacher pushing Coulthard so hard. But interesting to see there Damon Hill moving to one side, trying to cool down his wet tyres, because the dry line will overheat these wet tyres. They need to move off that dry line to keep them in good condition on the straights.
And the gap between Hill and Schumacher is down now to 1.7 seconds. Damon Hill is carving great lumps off the lead of David Coulthard and Michael Schumacher. Schumacher pushing the Williams driver, and you can see, you don't need a stopwatch, you can see that Damon Hill, who has probably got the red mist well and truly, he's fired right up, having had something go seriously wrong at the start. Schumacher looking for the place as they go round the hairpin, and Damon Hill is closing. The 3 of them are going to be together very shortly, and Schumacher pushing as hard as he can because he needs to get past Coulthard. Already he's achieved one of his objectives, which is to get ahead of Damon Hill, but is he going to stay there? We're going to have this classic situation again that we've seen so many times this season as Damon nearly loses it, of Schumacher and Hill fighting each other down the straight, round the corners, and Damon again dives to the right to get a wet patch to cool his wet tyres. He's obviously concerned about them, so it's not difficult to predict that they will be coming in and changing to slicks if things stay where they are. We're coming up to the end of lap 4 now. The gap between Coulthard and Hill was 2 seconds at the end of lap 3, and as Schumacher again tries to get past Coulthard, we'll see how much Damon Hill has cut it down this time. So it was 2 seconds, and it still is, just about.
And we saw then Schumacher goes to the inside to cool his wet tyres. Coulthard stays on the line. Now that's not going to help Coulthard's tyres, but at the moment they're lapping in 1 minute 38. Now that's 4 seconds slower than in fact Hill lapped in the wet in the morning session yesterday, so they'll need to go a fair bit quicker yet. Frentzen jump start penalty, so we're going to see Frentzen Sauber come into the pit lane in the next lap or 2. So we're going to need to see these cars go about a 2 or 3, 4 seconds a lap faster yet before they're going to come in for slick tyres. But I would have thought, if we're going to take a stab at it, I would think they've got probably half a dozen, 10 laps before it's really going to be time to come in. Now, when they do so, the question is, will they bother to put fuel in? It all depends when exactly that is. If it's lap 10 or later, we're now on lap 4, then I'm sure they're going to put some fuel in. If it's in the next few laps, and frankly, I don't think the times are fast enough to warrant a tyre change yet, then they won't. But let's take a look at Jean Alesi's lap time. That's just 0.8 of a second slower back in 6th place on slicks than Coulthard is on wets.
Damon Hill is the fastest man on the track. Lap 3, 1 minute 37.38, and you can see now what rewards it's bringing him, because he is definitely closer to Michael Schumacher. Lap 5, Coulthard leads, Schumacher second, Hill right behind him. Eddie Irvine is 7 seconds back now in 4th position ahead of Johnny Herbert. You can see the 2 of them in the background. Herbert is 5th. Jean Alesi in the Scarlet Ferrari, you can see it coming into the left-hander now, is 6th. And behind him, 7th is Rubens Barrichello, 8th is Frentzen, but he will have to come in and take that penalty, and that will not please him on his home track where he so much wanted to do well. And Alesi now is right up under the wing of Johnny Herbert's Benetton in 5th position and going for the place and taking it, is he? Yes, as he goes into turn 1, Jean Alesi, and remember, Alesi is on slick tyres. He's currently lapping about 1.5 seconds slower than the leaders, but you can see that Johnny Herbert's on wets, Alesi's on slicks. Now that is very significant indeed.
Absolutely, and I think Alesi's situation, the slick tyre gamble, is working. He's only now 12 seconds behind David Coulthard. They're on lap 5, and he's lapping about 1.5 seconds slower. But we can see there, Hill has set the fastest race lap in his chase of Schumacher. He's now just half a second off Schumacher. Hill back in 3rd place. But if the wet tyre gamble is working for Alesi and Ferrari, it is not working for McLaren, because Häkkinen is back in 20th place and Blundell in 22nd, both on slicks.
And David Coulthard is driving superbly. He is in a strange car. He's in Damon Hill's spare car. He spun off on the early lap before the race started, and Damon Hill again dives to the right. Schumacher takes up his line. He wasn't moving across to block Hill. He was moving across to get his line for the chicane there. but it had the same effect, and Damon Hill is now, as you see, all over the Benetton, looking for the second place, and if he gets by, that will be exactly what Michael Schumacher does not want. And Coulthard is now 1.3 seconds ahead of these fighting two, who are tending to hold each other up. Coulthard, in a strange car, has got a clear track in front of him. Schumacher hasn't. He's got to try and catch Coulthard, and at the same time he's got to try and keep Hill back as Heinz-Harald Frentzen comes in from 9th position, having been passed in for his 10-second penalty.
Frentzen, very much the hero of the last race in Portugal, has been falling off the road a great deal here this weekend, qualifying there down in 8th place, and this won't help his chances at all. But all eyes of the team managers will surely be on the performance of Jean Alesi. Not because he's in a Ferrari, but because he's the man on slicks, and they're going to be looking to see when Alesi's lap times on slicks surpass those of Coulthard's on wets. The problem for Alesi at the moment is that he's bogged down in traffic. He's just, to the extent that he's just got by Johnny Herbert. He's now got Eddie Irvine in front of him, but his last lap was a 1 minute 38.9. Coulthard's last lap a 1 minute 37.5, so he's still 1.4 seconds shy. But I think part of that comes from the fact that he's being held up by traffic, and indeed we knew that he had to overtake Herbert on that previous lap.
Lap 7, here are the rivals, Schumacher and Hill, 2nd and 3rd. Coulthard is still on the way to achieving his objective, a second victory. But this race, just as much as victory, is about the World Championship, and therefore about Schumacher 2nd, Hill 3rd, with Schumacher 17 points ahead of the Williams driver. Damon Hill looks for it. Michael Schumacher closes the door, but is he under pressure? Yes, indeed he is, and Schumacher is still nearly a second behind David Coulthard.
And Damon Hill is the fastest man on the course. He set another new fastest lap, 1 minute 36.8. Hill was in great form in the wet sessions. He really has been the master of anything other than dry conditions here at the Nürburgring, and he's clearly pressurising Michael Schumacher very hard. Schumacher, of course, still running under a one-race ban. He's got another 2 races after this one of that to go, whereas Damon Hill is now clear of his one-race suspended ban, and that was incurred after he hit the back of Schumacher at Monza. So what that means is that Schumacher's got to be careful not to get involved in any antics that could be deemed as being controversial, whilst Damon Hill's got a slightly easier time. Difficult to overtake here at the Nürburgring, and in these wet conditions he's just going to have to hope that Schumacher makes a mistake, because I suspect that's going to be his only real chance.
Hill to Irvine, 12 seconds is Damon Hill in 3rd position, Irvine in 4th, as yet again Damon Hill has a look, yet again Schumacher resists, and is this time going to go through? No, yet. Wow. Schumacher holding his line, and this of course is an exact replica of the circumstances in earlier races this year, where one or the other has been looking for a way past, usually Damon Hill, and it's usually been Schumacher in the front therefore, and that is the situation here. So Damon has got to be very, very careful indeed, not just about hitting Michael Schumacher, but remembering the potential penalty if he does. So Schumacher has got the advantage. He's in front. And it's easier for him to resist Damon Hill by placing his car appropriately than it is for David to get past. And the performance of these cars is almost identical.
Damon Hill clearly all over the back of Schumacher now, and it won't take much of a slip from Schumacher just being a little bit late on the power for Hill to have a very real and successful chance of going by. The questions are fuel loads. Does Michael Schumacher have a heavier Benetton? Or is the fact that Hill is pushing Schumacher so hard merely a reflection of the fact that, as we've seen this weekend, that at the moment that the Williams is a substantially superior car to the Benetton, probably by as much as 1 second. But let's look at this slick time, wet time gap. Jean Alesi, 1 minute 38.0. David Coulthard, 1 minute 37.0. So 1 second faster on wet still. But on the other hand, that means Alesi's closed it down. It was 1.4. So we are getting towards a situation when slick tyres are going to be better, but we're not there yet.
Getting very close to it. And Damon Hill very close to Michael Schumacher. Meantime, David Coulthard driving his own race carefully and determinedly in the front. You can see the fog at the Nürburgring, but that's fairly high. That's at helicopter level. It's not down here yet at circuit level. And Coulthard is 1.8 seconds ahead as Schumacher runs wide there. Damon Hill looks for his opportunity to get through. Eddie Irvine is still 4th. Alesi is still 5th. Herbert is still in 6th position. Barrichello is still 7th. Berger 8th. Brundle is in 9th position in the Ligier, so he's moved up 3 places from 12th on the grid. Mika Salo is an excellent 10th from 15th on the grid. 11th is Parnis, and in 12th position Bouillon, as into the pits comes Rubens Barrichello from 8th position. Now, let's have a good look at this. That's wets coming off. That's wet tyres coming off, and it's my guess, yes, he's going on to slicks. So what Jonathan has been talking about has come to pass, and Jean Alesi now is in 4th position.
Well, that was a long stop just to change tyres. I'm pretty sure that I saw the fuel line on that, Jordan, and it would have made sense to put some fuel in. Quite how much we don't know, but we'll see if we can get some information from the pits to see if that was simply a long pit stop because of a normal but heavy fuel load going in, or if indeed they had a problem.
Now, the significance of Alesi being in 5th position is that he has got past Eddie Irvine, who you will remember started 5th on the grid, and Alesi was a place behind him. Alesi on slicks is reaping the reward still. He's moved up from 6th to 5th, from 5th to 4th, and Moreno has been passed by Coulthard, who has got Schumacher right behind him now. The 40 in the way of Damon Hill, but it won't be for very long as they exit turn 13. That's the last corner. This is close motor racing. Less than a second now between 1st, 2nd and 3rd, and Damon Hill earlier in this race. We're on lap 11 now. Earlier in this race was over 4 seconds behind Coulthard and over 3 seconds behind Schumacher.
And this is most significant news. Jean Alesi has now set the race's fastest lap on slick tyres. 1:36.3, that's the signal. It's now time, guys, to get those slick tyres on. So let's expect a rush of pit stops now for slick tyres.
And let's expect Jean Alesi to move into the lead. If that happens, he's 12.8 seconds behind race leader David Coulthard on lap 11. His lap times are matching those of the wet-shod cars in front of the Benetton, and the Williams teams are ready to get their drivers in. Now, who's coming in first for Williams? Will it be Coulthard or will it be Hill?
Now, with these pit stops, bear in mind that a tyre change takes just 5 or 6 seconds. Anything more than 5 or 6 seconds means that fuel has gone into those cars.
So the magic figure, 5 or 6. Coulthard leads, Schumacher 2nd, Hill 3rd. It's a Benetton sandwich between the two Williams, and Damon looking all the time for a way to get through. Lap 11, is one of them coming in at the end of this lap? Indeed he is. Michael Schumacher comes into the pits as the two Williams cars. Hill's in as well. Damon Hill is in. You see them turn in together. Damon Hill stopped earlier because he's at the far end of the pits. This is the camera on the helmet of the mechanic who's fitting the left rear. Schumacher gets out first, which you would expect because he came in first and stopped first. Damon Hill proceeds down, and you see Johnny Herbert going through. Now he's in 6th position. And so Schumacher joins behind Herbert. Hill joins, and as he does so, Gerhard Berger, who was 7th and will now be 5th, comes in. So both Schumacher and Damon Hill have got to fight their way through some very, very quick traffic. There is Herbert. There is Schumacher. Behind Schumacher is Berger. Behind Berger is Damon Hill. David Coulthard still leads, but of course has got to come in. Meantime, this is his opportunity to go as quickly as we possibly can. We ought to see a fastest lap of the race from... No, we won't, because he's still on wet tyres, and Alesi, of course, is on slicks. Alesi is the quickest man in the race at the present moment. Now, Johnny Herbert will undoubtedly move over and let Schumacher through. He might not be so willing to let Damon Hill through. Now, this is Hill chasing the Ferrari of Gerhard Berger.
And at the moment, Coulthard is 13 seconds ahead of Jean Alesi. The stop's going to take about 25, so that's going to put Coulthard, or another way round, it's going to put Alesi 13 seconds ahead in the lead after the stops are done of David Coulthard.
Hill going for for Berger. Berger, why should Gerhard Berger move over? And David Coulthard is in. So race leader David Coulthard goes in, and Jean Alesi has gone through. Jean Alesi leads the Grand Prix of Europe as the slick-shod David Coulthard exits the pit lane. Irvine's gone through, Schumacher has gone through, but Coulthard joins ahead of Schumacher and ahead of Berger and ahead of Damon Hill. So we've got a really exciting situation now with Jean Alesi in the lead, and the Ferrari decision to send him and Gerhard Berger out on slicks where the others were on wets has certainly paid off for Alesi, if not for Berger. And there's Coulthard. Behind him is Michael Schumacher. And of course, Michael Schumacher is ahead of Damon Hill. You saw Damon Hill behind Berger. So Berger is holding Hill up. Damon will be desperately anxious to get past the Ferrari, to get to grips with his chief rival in the World Championship, as David Coulthard nearly gets the Williams sideways there. He's coming up behind Eddie Irvine. And we're on lap 13 in this now 67-lap race. Irvine, Coulthard, we're with Damon Hill. That's Gerhard Berger ahead of us. Most experienced Grand Prix driver of them all at the present moment, Gerhard Berger.
Now, what we can see on the track is a pretty fair reflection of what I think happened in the pits. Now, that's that we've got Michael Schumacher a lot closer to David Coulthard and Damon Hill a little bit further back, because I don't think Benetton put any fuel in that car of Schumacher's. It was a 6.6 second stop, too short, I think, to put anything in, but I might have been wrong. On the other hand, Coulthard and Hill did have some fuel going. I could distinctly see the fuel line. It was a 9.6 second stop. They were in the pits for 2 or 3 seconds longer, and it may have been a little bit of a splash of fuel going in those Williams, because as they know, they are relatively marginal, just stopping once. So what that means is that I think Schumacher, Coulthard and Hill are now all on a one-stop strategy, and Papis, starting position penalty there. That means he'll need to come in for his 10-second stop.
Second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth together. Irvine is second, and he is 12 seconds behind Jean Alesi. Now there is Eddie Irvine. Right behind him you can see David Coulthard in third position. So the Jordan Peugeot in second, ahead of the Williams Renault third. The Benetton Renault of Michael Schumacher is behind Coulthard, and Damon Hill again swarming about behind Gerhard Berger's Ferrari. Damon in 6th place, Berger in 5th position. Listen to it, listen to that Renault engine. Coming up to turn 8 here, and Michael Schumacher just slides his car inside the Pacific, and Damon Hill slides the Williams inside Gerhard Berger's Ferrari with a superb manoeuvre and goes up into 5th position. Now, can he again catch Michael Schumacher as Berger goes past the Pacific and Coulthard goes past Eddie Irvine? Does he? No, he does not. Eddie shuts the door just in time. Eddie who's second, Coulthard who is third, Schumacher who is fourth, Hill who is fifth, and Berger who is down to 6th.
We mustn't forget that Eddie Irvine there, we're looking at him now with the orange helmet, he is on wet tyres. The rest of them certainly around Coulthard, Schumacher, Hill and Berger all on slicks. That means that Eddie Irvine will need to come into the pits himself in another 2 or 3 laps. I don't think he can hold out too much longer. He's lapping 4 seconds slower than he would do, or 3 seconds slower than he would do on. Now that's where Damon Hill went up the inside of Gerhard Berger. Berger perhaps hesitating because of the Pacific car just ahead of him. Good move by Hill. Let's have another look. There's the Pacific. Schumacher goes inside the Pacific. Berger has a look. Hill takes advantage of the whole lot and comes up the inside, moving Hill up to 5th from 6th.
Delatraz, who is only in his third Grand Prix, moves across the front of Damon Hill and nearly took him off. It's Delatraz's birthday, and he's the slowest driver in the race. He's been lapped already. I said it was going to happen round about lap 19. Well, lap 9, he's been lapped long ago, and Damon Hill now is right up with the Benetton, as you can see. Coulthard, Schumacher. Damon Hill has taken vast chunks again out of Michael Schumacher's lead, and Eddie Irvine is going into the pits. So it's Alesi leading now, and he's out on his own because he's over 16 seconds ahead of David Coulthard, who's got Schumacher right behind him, as Eddie Irvine, who was sixth, comes into the pits for his slick tyres. And that is the Ligier of Martin Brundle retiring as he slides off. He may have stalled his engine. On the other hand, he may not. But anyhow, Eddie Irvine rejoins. And you can see down the pit straight, and you can see that Eddie Irvine rejoins and turns in front of the Sauber of Bouillon, who is in seventh position. So Eddie Irvine should be in, therefore, sixth position. And Jean Alesi in the Ferrari, the man who won the Canadian Grand Prix, his first victory, as you look at Martin Brundle spinning off. It's Parnis, my apologies. Hill goes through this time, but Michael Schumacher's got the inside line on the right-hander, and now this time Damon Hill does it magnificently. That was a clean move. So many times they've come together, but this time Damon Hill had got the edge on Michael Schumacher, and just as in Portugal, they kept away from each other, and Damon Hill goes through ahead of Michael Schumacher. So the race order now is Jean Alesi on lap 17, leading by nearly 20 seconds, leading David Coulthard. Out of the race goes Mark Blundell in the McLaren. That was on lap 17 in front of the Mercedes home crowd in Germany, and a battle between the Ferrari of Gerhard Berger and the Williams, as coming towards us you see second, third, fourth, fifth. As you can see, unseen by us, Michael Schumacher has got ahead again of Damon Hill. All that hard work that Damon did has disappeared because Michael Schumacher is back in third position behind Coulthard and Alesi on lap 17 out of 67. I remind you, a 67-lap race, and again, Damon Hill is going for it. I think we're going to see a lot of this in this race. They're very closely matched in terms of ability. Their cars are now very closely matched because Benetton have made improvements. And Michael Schumacher moves across there, and Damon Hill, did they touch each other? Well, even if they did, it was unavoidable.
Well, that looked pretty naughty of Michael Schumacher there. Hill was on the outside, he moved across. I suspect that he didn't see him, but even so, Hill will be feeling very aggrieved at that. The car's clearly touched, and Hill did very well to keep control of that, and that's really going to fire him up, there's no doubt about it. I thought Damon did a tremendous job cleanly overtaking Michael Schumacher. He came up the inside into that first left-hander, he muscled his way around the outside on the next right to move ahead. What happened subsequently, and it must have been roundabout here, we don't know. Let's just hope Damon Hill's car is still in good condition. Let's have another look here. 160 miles an hour here. Hill's got the run on Schumacher coming up towards this left-hand corner. Watch for Schumacher to come from your left. There, Schumacher moves across. Now, and then Hill locks up. He touches the back of the Benetton slides, the Williams slides. Well, I think Michael Schumacher was out of order there. Look at the way the white line manages to lose his grip from the back end of that Williams. You touch these slickly painted white lines with a still damp track, and it really means you lose a lot of grip.
And that's Montemini in the Pacific, who's in the way of Damon Hill. Montemini, who is in 15th position and has been lapped by the leader. He's about to be lapped too by the others. But he held up Damon Hill, no doubt about that, as he turned in. But Hill has got past him, Berger has got past him, lap 18 out of 67. Alesi leads by 21 seconds, and his last lap was 1:32.7 compared with Coulthard's 1:35.2. So that gives you an indication of how Jean Alesi is really flying. As you look at the battle, second, third, fourth, behind David Coulthard, and out of the Sauber Ford gets the hero of Germany, the second hero of Germany, who waves to the crowd, Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Well, he's been off a few times today, and that's what happened then as he moved in to try and get inside the 40. I think it was of Pedro Diniz, who was 19th on the grid, and Frentzen is obviously furious. The 40 turned in and took him off. There's another replay, and you can see on the right-hand side of your screen the Sauber of Frentzen in the gravel trap. Frentzen out of the race. And now here.
But what's great about these sort of weather conditions, when you've got a slippery track still and the cars are still lapping, that fastest lap from Alesi, the 1:32.9, that's 13 seconds away from a really good dry time. Grip levels, therefore, are still very marginal. And that means that we're seeing a lot of the drifting around. We're seeing them wrestle to try and put down 700 horsepower with the rear-wheel drive. No traction control, of course. We're seeing some great car control here, and that's probably one of the reasons why Alesi is doing so well. And still, he's lapping 2 or 3 seconds quicker than Coulthard. We're not quite sure how much difference traffic's making to that.
Well, I don't want to be a Jeremiah, but I can feel the weather deteriorating, even in the commentary box. It's getting darker. The fog, which was blotting out the trees earlier today, is coming back again. It's at the top of the trees. It would not surprise me at all to see the rain, which has been forecast for this race coming down fairly soon. Jean Alesi, the race leader, comes up, and you can see he's got 3 cars in front of them. One of them is Max Papis, and the leader is through. Jean Alesi is on his 20th lap now, and he's continuing to really fly, because his 19th lap was the fastest of the race. He's increasing his lead. It's now 28 seconds. That's a massive margin. He could come in, change tyres, and still get out again without losing his lead. So Alesi leads, Coulthard is second, there he is. Schumacher is third, right behind him is Hill fourth. Berger is fifth, just a car's length or so behind Damon Hill. And in sixth position, but a long way back now, is Eddie Irvine, having rejoined on slick tyres. And Damon Hill is attacking again.
Both these cars, Schumacher's Benetton and Hill's Williams, running exactly the same Renault V10 engine. Same speeds on the straight, same level of acceleration. It's just down to drivers and the chassis.
Now, this is very exciting for you and I, but it's not nearly good enough for Damon Hill. 17 points behind in the World Championship. And if they finished where they are now, he would be more points behind Michael Schumacher, who is edging away all the time, race by race. Hill, as at minimum, got to get past Schumacher.
And we're coming up now. This is the slow chicane where Hill got by Berger. He's having a look at Schumacher. We can see it from here. Berger's not far away, just 1.2 seconds. Hill drifts the Williams around. Berger still in hot pursuit, but Alesi's pace is quite fantastic. Just maybe he's going to make 2 stops. If he's on a 2-stop strategy, we could expect to see the first pit stop from Alesi within the next 5 laps, probably after 3 laps.
Coulthard, Schumacher, third position. They're coming up to catch Mika Häkkinen now, who's in 14th place in the McLaren Mercedes, with, you will notice, the high wing, which they use for high downforce circuits. Doesn't make a lot of difference, but it makes some, and every little helps at a track like this. So Coulthard is going to be the first to lap Mika Häkkinen in the McLaren Mercedes. Another bad day for McLaren, with Mark Blundell already out of the race on his 6th lap. And incidentally, Olivier Panis and Roberto Moreno are both out of the running effectively, as past the McLaren in a minute. I was going to say goes, but he turned in, and so there is the McLaren, who moves over and lets David Coulthard through, the second place man. No, he does not. And this is giving Schumacher the chance to close up on Coulthard. Hill the chance to close up on Schumacher. And there was a passing move starting there, and it's completed as Michael Schumacher dives past David Coulthard and moves up into second place. Even worse news for Damon Hill. Schumacher up to second, Coulthard down to third. Hill is still fourth. Berger behind them is still fifth, but anything could happen. They're going to try and take Mika Häkkinen shortly.
Well, what happened there was that Mika Häkkinen's slower pace slowed David Coulthard coming onto that back straight section with that kink in it. That enabled Schumacher to have the run. We could see him closing. And frankly, I think David Coulthard should have seen Schumacher coming, and if he'd taken the inside line to that chicane, Schumacher wouldn't have got by. But he left the door open, and once Schumacher had come through, there was nothing he could do to retaliate. So let's see what Schumacher can do now. Now he's certainly not being held up. He's going to get by Mika Häkkinen very shortly indeed. Coming down to the hairpin, he's done it. And we really don't want to see Mika Häkkinen holding up this tremendous battle for second place.
Well, Schumacher in second place, Coulthard third, Hill fourth, Berger fifth, Häkkinen still in front of all of them. Häkkinen's driving his own race, of course, but he's not actually fighting anybody. He should be moving over, and he does so. Coulthard goes through, Hill goes through, Berger does not, because Häkkinen has to turn in, but he will move over and let Gerhard Berger through, and he does so. And this has given Michael Schumacher the opportunity to ease away from the two Williams team men of Coulthard and Hill. Now we're with Michael Schumacher, we're with Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari now. Coming up to Häkkinen's McLaren Mercedes. Now that Mercedes engine has got a lot of grunt. And Damon Hill having a look to try and get past Coulthard, because he's extremely worried Schumacher is pulling away.
And this really is significant. It's going to be extremely important for David Coulthard to keep in touch with Michael Schumacher. If he can't do it, if Schumacher pulls away and Hill continues to hound Coulthard like this, there is going to be a very, very strong case for Coulthard to move over and let Damon Hill through. And at the moment, he seems to be doing the exact reverse. And Hill could certainly have moved up onto the inside and gone by Coulthard leading onto the pit straight had Coulthard wanted to cooperate. The gap so far, Schumacher to Coulthard is 2.7 seconds. Coulthard to Hill, 0.4. Let's keep in touch with that gap.
Because David Coulthard has made it crystal clear that he is not going to move over unless he gets direct orders from the team.
Right, we saw tyres out there for the Ferrari. It is lap 23 they're on now. This will coincide with the first of two stops for Jean Alesi. Alesi is 34 seconds ahead, though, of Michael Schumacher, and that means that he should be able to get out ahead of Schumacher, and that will mean he'll still retain the lead. So we need to look for the length of this pit stop. Expect, if it's the first of two, for it to be round about 10 seconds, 10-11 seconds, I would say, at rest. That's going to be consistent with the first of two.
You're looking at the two Williams in third and fourth positions, with Gerhard Berger in fifth place behind them, and Damon Hill is ahead of David Coulthard. So he's done it. Damon Hill has gotten ahead of his teammate, and now he's got to get the hammer down and try and catch Michael Schumacher. He's 3.7 seconds behind him, or was at the end of the lap. And Coulthard, by the same token, is going to have to struggle now to keep the flying Gerhard Berger in fifth position. But here's a replay. This is Hill going through. Now, whether Coulthard actually moved over and let him through or not, I don't know. It seemed to me as though he did. But that is Schumacher. You're now looking at Michael Schumacher.
Well, we didn't see an approach to that, so we've got no way of knowing. But that was the place that Schumacher went by David Coulthard. So he's either leaving the door open there, or indeed he was cooperating. But now Hill needs to really set after the chase of Schumacher. We know that at those first pit stops, to change from wet tyres to slicks, Williams and Benetton, and in fact Jordan with Barrichello, all put fuel on. And that's Gerhard Berger going then by David Coulthard. Now, has David Coulthard got a problem?
Well, remember, he's in the spare car. It might be something to do with that, although I don't see why it should be, because he's now on lap 25. He led the race for a long time, but the fact remains that he's been passed now by Schumacher, by Hill, and by Gerhard Berger, but he's fighting back, and we're on lap 25 with Jean Alesi as Gerhard Berger holds his hand up. I think that's to say, oh, he's going in. Gerhard Berger going in. He's always very careful to put his hand up after that awful accident with Ricardo Patrese in Portugal, when Gerhard pulled across into the pits. Patrese didn't realise he was doing it and went flying through the air. So Gerhard Berger in from fifth position. He is 26 seconds ahead of Eddie Irvine, who is in 6th place. So he ought to be able to get out before the Jordan driver comes past the pits. I'm watching very carefully indeed. Gerhard Berger drives out. One of the Pacifics goes past me. And Eddie Irvine's just gone past, so you'll see Gerhard Berger join, and he joins right in front of the Jordan. He has just done it, but Eddie Irvine's tyres, although worn, will be hotter than those of Gerhard Berger. But if he's going to get past, he's got to do it now.
Absolutely, and this is now where Berger's got to really put caution to the wind. He's really got to go for it to try and keep Irvine behind him, and I think he will probably succeed. But what was interesting there is that, yes, it was a Ferrari that stopped, but it wasn't the one that I thought. It wasn't the one who was going the quicker, and it was Gerhard Berger. And that means that Alesi set another fastest lap there, 28.3. He really is the class of the field from a driving point of view here today. And again, these damp conditions really do mean that driving sensitivity, skill, courage, all of these things blended into one really do pay off. And that's the man, Jean Alesi. He is driving clearly better than anybody else in this race at the moment. Quite superb. Now, could he be going for just one stop? If he's not going to stop within the next 5 laps, then I think that's what he's going to do. And that makes his performance all the more incredible.
Well, this is a comment and not a criticism of our German producer. We haven't seen much of Alesi. It's nice to see him again. But such has been the battle behind him that it's not surprising that all the concentration has been on there. Schumacher, the home boy, in 2nd position. And he's now 37 seconds behind Alesi. Alesi's drive really is quite incredible. Now, the gap between Schumacher and Hill is down to 1.6 seconds. Damon Hill has gone a lot faster than Schumacher on the lap that's just been finished. Again, he's closing up, but again, he's going to have the problem of getting past Schumacher, especially as the German copes with traffic, which he does extraordinarily well. Schumacher there goes past Deniz in the 40, who is in 17th place, and has already been lapped twice. Damon Hill has got to go past. Race order, lap 26. Alesi leads. Schumacher there is 2nd. Hill passing the 40 is 3rd. Coulthard is 4th. Berger is down the order now with Eddie Irvine right behind him in 6th position still. Johnny Herbert is in 7th place. Barrichello is in 8th. And everybody up to 8th position has been lapped already. Martin Brundle is 9th and has been lapped. Mika Salo in the Tyrrell is 10th and, of course, has been lapped. So, there is Schumacher passing or about to pass the Minardi of Luca Badoer, who is holding him up, and Damon Hill will take advantage of this to get right back with Michael Schumacher in the Benetton, provided Badoer does not hold him up as well. On that last lap, Berger did more than keep ahead of Irvine. He actually pulled out 4 seconds. So Berger there comfortable in 5th place, 24 seconds behind David Coulthard. But let's just wonder what could be happening with these pit stops from now. The options were at the start of this race, stop once, round about lap 34, lap 38, something like that, or stop twice. Maybe the first one being lap 23 to lap 25, 6, something like that. The second one, lap 45-ish. Now, we know that they put about 4 seconds worth of fuel in, they being Schumacher, Hill and Coulthard. 4 seconds of fuel is 12 litres. 12 litres is about 4 laps worth. If they were going to make 2 stops in this race, they would have planned on the first one being round about lap 24, I believe, 25, as we said. That means that 4 laps beyond that, because that's how far that fuel could have taken them, should take them round about lap 30. So if we see anybody coming in the next, we're on lap 28 now, on the next 5 laps, 4 or 5 laps, that means that their original strategy was to go for 2 stops. If they don't come in before that time, then I believe it was 1 stop all the way. And I believe that Alesi has got his own on-board tyre factory, because he's just gone round faster again on lap 27.
Now what we can see there is the Ferrari mechanics adjusting a front wing nose cone assembly. They are changing the setting on a front wing. Now one would intimate from that somebody, Alesi or Berger, needs a new front wing section on the car, and that they are not, either it's been damaged or they're not happy with the balance. And the balance of these cars is critical, and that can be affected by adjusting the front wing. That would be a way of changing it at a pit stop. Look at the way the mud is being picked up from that slow chicane there. The bollard being well and truly moved out of the way.
Well, if it's a Lacey, heaven knows why he wants a new nose, unless it's to slow him down a bit, because he's now 42.5 seconds on lap 28 ahead of Michael Schumacher. And there is a Lacey going inside the Pacific of Andrea Montemini, who is 15th and has been lapped for the second time now by the race leader. So you're watching a quite incredible performance by Jean Lacey, who is still on lap 29 now on the same set of tyres that he started with, the same set of slick tyres. He started 6th and he's come up through the field to take the lead and is very much the fastest man on the track. His fastest lap 28, he's gone faster again.
And the skill that we're seeing from Jean Lacey so brilliantly is twofold. One, controlling a 700 horsepower car in these slippery conditions. They're still lapping 8 seconds slower than a dry time. But secondly, it's judging just how much more grip there is on each lap. Because, of course, every lap, and it's not raining, the track's getting a little bit better, and the really first-class drivers are able to sense that improvement in track condition, and translating to just how much faster they can turn into a corner, how much later they can brake, how much earlier they can get back on the throttle, better than the others. And that's what a Lacey is doing so brilliantly here.
And you're watching world champion Michael Schumacher. Second in the championship, there he is, Damon Hill. The gap between them is just under 2 seconds. The previous lap of Michael Schumacher was 0.4 of a second faster than Damon, who is currently not making any inroads on Schumacher's lead on him. And of course, Lacey is ahead of both of them. One of Hill's difficulties, of course, and you can see it as you look at the track, is that there is still a damp line off the one dry line, and if you move on off the dry line onto the damp on slick tyres, you're going to be in danger of spinning off, and Damon will feel that as he sits in the car. Lacey, Schumacher, Hill. Coulthard is in 4th position, 10 seconds behind Hill. 5th is Berger, 6th is Irvine.
Yes, David Coulthard is dropping back at the rate of about 1 second a lap at the moment from Damon Hill, and he's also dropping into the clutches of Gerhard Berger. So I'm sure that David Coulthard does have some kind of a problem, as Damon Hill sets a new fastest lap, 1 minute 26.5, just 1 second now behind Michael Schumacher. We're going to see a succession of these fastest laps, of course, as the track conditions change and drivers get accustomed to them, keep dipping away.
We're with Lacey. In front of us is Johnny Herbert. He is in 7th position, would you believe, on the 30th lap, which is still not half distance. Jean Lacey has caught the 7th place man, who turns across him. Oh, I don't like that, thank you very much, says Lacey, who shakes a fist in fury at Johnny Herbert. Lacey's a mercurial, temperamental chap, and he had a tremendous ding-dong with the Ferrari management after the Portuguese Grand Prix, because Jean Todt, who is the team manager, now it says, here's a replay, there's the Jordan, behind it the Benetton of Johnny Herbert. There is Jean Lacey, who gesticulates in rage at Johnny Herbert for something that Lacey didn't like. So Lacey had a go at Jean Todt about the fact in Portugal that the Ferrari management made him, or tried to make him, defer to Gerhard Berger, who was on a different pit stop strategy, and Lacey was holding Berger up. In the end, Berger got past, but Lacey is a man who is easily roused.
The numbers that we've just seen, we saw on top of the graphics, the 0.3. That's the gap at what we call the second intermediate. That's 2/3 of the way around the lap between Schumacher and Hill. The one in brackets was the gap the previous lap. That was 0.4. That means that Hill is continuing to close that gap to Michael Schumacher.
But to give you the motor racing cliche yet again, closing is one thing, passing is another. Fastest lap to Damon Hill, 1:26.108. It's brought him right up to Michael Schumacher, who has got ahead of him Max Papis, the Italian driver of the Arrows Heart, who is a comparative newcomer to Formula One. He joined this season, and if he doesn't move over and let Schumacher through very smartly indeed, Damon is indeed, he is now right with the Benetton. Is Papis going to enable Hill to get through? No. Schumacher goes past him though, and Hill goes past him. And Damon now has got the Benetton literally in his sights. The radio aerial in front of him is acting as a foresight on his Williams to line up with the Benetton Renault as he goes for it. And Hill must get past Michael Schumacher if he's not to lose more World Championship points to the German at the Nürburgring, which of course is Michael's home track. Giving it everything he's got, but then so is Damon, and Alesi now is 41.4 seconds ahead of Schumacher.
Fantastic racing here from Michael Schumacher and Damon Hill, so locked together after 31 laps of motor racing and 1 pit stop. But a shame that David Coulthard's not tagging on behind them. In fact, Coulthard's clearly in some sort of a problem because he's now 15 seconds behind Damon Hill and again sinking back at over a second a lap now.
Certainly not going to be David Coulthard's second victory unless something very dramatic happens ahead of him, because he's 57 seconds behind Alesi, who is 41 seconds ahead of Schumacher, and there's a coming together there between the Benetton and the Jordan Peugeot, and the Benetton is Johnny Herbert, the Jordan Peugeot is Eddie Irvine. They were 7th and 8th. And it looks to me as though that may well have taken Irvine out of the race. Herbert is still running, comes in, up goes the front of the car. They'll be putting a new nose on it. You can see the new nose on the left. At the same time, of course, they changed tyres and wheels, a new set of slicks, and put in more fuel. And Johnny Herbert was in 8th position when he attempted that passing move, which was so unsuccessful. And that means to say now Rubens Barrichello is in 6th position, and Michael Schumacher has just made the fastest lap of the race. It's 1:25.2. You may think this is a long pit stop, and indeed it is, but to put a new nose cone on with all the fixings that have to be done up is no rapid job.
Not at all, and it's amazing that they can even do it, and amazing that the damage can be limited just to a nose cone when you think that those cars probably tangled together at about 80 miles an hour. But so tough are these. So Schumacher sets the fastest lap now as teammate Johnny Herbert comes out, and we've heard that the Williams pit are telling us that there is nothing in fact wrong with David Coulthard, who's now 17 seconds behind Damon Hill, with the inference being that it's merely the fact that he's in the T car as to why he's dropping back so quickly. Now that seems slightly odd to me because he adapted so well to a change of condition before, and nevertheless that's what we're being told.
Martin Brundle in the Ligier is ahead of the closing Michael Schumacher. Martin Brundle, who is in 9th position and has already been lapped. And Damon Hill was only 1/10 of a second slower on that new fastest lap of Michael Schumacher's. Now, is Martin Brundle going to move over and let them both through? This is into the last right-hander to complete lap 34, into lap 35, 67-lap race. And a spin there now. It's a replay of Johnny Herbert. We were on the Benetton as he struck Eddie Irvine, Jordan Peugeot, and you look at the Benetton now coming towards.
And Hill sets another new fastest lap. It won't be this time, I'm quite sure, because the Ligier there would have held him up. But let's just think about strategy once again. They are now on lap 34. Lap 34 is mid-distance, and we would expect them to come in if they're going to make one stop sometime now, and indeed that's exactly what they're doing. Now this must be Schumacher's stop. Schumacher is 38 seconds behind Alesi. They're going to drop back. He's dropped back to about 5th behind Berger, and Alesi's coming in for his first stop. That means we're going to see both Alesi and Schumacher coming in by the look of it.
So Jean Alesi stops.
Let's expect about 12 seconds worth of fuel, about a 14-second stationary time.
Alesi in the lead by 38 seconds from Michael Schumacher. He ought to be able to get out, but he's dropped off the jacks before now and broken the transmission, but he doesn't do so this time. In Italy, the year before last, he came in, stopped, dropped off the jack and broke the gearbox and furiously lost the lead.
This race may depend on how fast Schumacher's pit stop is compared to Hill's. Let's watch the time. Again, the Benetton tends to have a larger fuel tank, but he is stopping earlier, and it's probably going to be a similar time, 14-second stationary. Let's see if they can do it any quicker. They do. Now that's interesting. 7.7 seconds stationary.
So Michael Schumacher comes out of the pit lane. New set of tyres. There is Jean Alesi on lap 35, just having changed his tyres, still in the lead, as you would expect, with the massive gap that there was between him and the second man when he came into the pits. And I hate to say it and start making forecasts, but things really are on lap 35 in the 67-lap race looking very good for Jean Alesi, who won his first Grand Prix in his considerable career in Canada this year. And this is the French Sicilian's 99th Grand Prix.
Well, I think that pit stop of Schumacher's was very significant because it was not long enough to enable him to get to the end of this race without taking on more fuel. So he's going to have to make another pit stop. Of that, I'm quite sure. The only possible way around that is if he started with a lot of fuel in to start with, but I don't think that can be the case. So what's going to be interesting is to see when Damon Hill comes in for his pit stop, which must be within the next 3 laps, and indeed David Coulthard. Let's see how long they stop for, because if their stop is merely, or if it's less than 10 seconds, that means that he's going to need to make a further pit stop too. I think it's more likely to be of a similar length to that of Alesi, i.e. 14 seconds, and if that's the case, that gives Damon Hill a clear advantage, because it means that he won't have to stop again on the one hand. It also means that Hill was more than a match for Schumacher, despite having a heavier car.
Lap 36, Alesi leads, and Damon Hill, as you see now, is in second place, and he's only 4.5 seconds behind the Ferrari, although of course he's got to make a stop. David Coulthard is in third position ahead of Michael Schumacher, and that could well help Damon Hill no end, because this is where team orders may start to help Damon Hill in his quest for the World Championship, with only 3 races to go, 2 in Japan and 1 in Australia after this. We're lap 36. Alesi is 4.5 seconds, take or give a tenth or so ahead of Damon Hill, who's just made the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 23.98. David Coulthard is 4.5 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher, who is 4th. Gerhard Berger is 5th, 10 seconds behind Schumacher. Barrichello is 6th. Irvine is in 7th place as Schumacher surges past the Tyrrell, and incidentally the second Tyrrell here is driven by Gabriele Tarquini, who has replaced Ukyo Katayama, who crashed at the beginning of the Portuguese Grand Prix 2 weeks ago. And Mika Salo is in 9th place with Pedro Lamy 10th and Mika Häkkinen in 11th place ahead of Luca Badoer. And the leaders have lapped everybody up to Eddie Irvine, who is 7th, as we go across the line with Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari. Here he is coming towards us. 5th position, chasing Michael Schumacher, but he's 13 seconds behind the Benetton.
Mika Häkkinen in for his first stop. We understand more significantly that the Williams team are readying a set of tyres. We think it's for David Coulthard. He's currently in 3rd place, and that will probably mean that he will come out just ahead of Rubens Barrichello. Barrichello is in 6th place at the moment. Let's see now, there we are, another 14-second stop. That's entirely consistent with Häkkinen's only serious refueling stop. So he will now run to the end of this race with no more stops. So we need to watch now. Let's watch the Williams of David Coulthard to come in and see how long he's stationary for. We're hoping that, as with Hill, it's going to be around about 14 seconds. That'll be confirmation that they can run to the end of the race with no more stops. And once again, we don't think that applies to Schumacher. We think he's got to make another stop.
And at the present moment, Damon Hill in 2nd place, who's only stopped once, is some 25 seconds ahead of his championship rival Michael Schumacher, and that is Jean Alesi leading the Grand Prix of Europe, and those are the Williams mechanics waiting for one of their men to come in. Alesi. Damon Hill behind him, and the gap between Alesi and Hill is down from 4.2 a few laps ago to 2.4 and less than that now. Damon Hill has lapped, and Schumacher is now the fastest man on the track. He's just gone round in 1:23.699. That's the confirmation on lap 37. This is lap 38, and Alesi is in danger of losing the lead to Damon Hill. Alesi and we rejoin Michael Schumacher's Benetton, looking for David Coulthard ahead of him. This is Hill challenging Alesi for the lead.
Well, this is potentially poor management by the Williams team, because let's not forget Lacey is on a full half tank of fuel there. That's going to mean that Lacey's car should be a couple of seconds, certainly 1.5 seconds slower than Hill. Hill's car must be right towards the end. And these seconds that are being lost, let's have a look at the times there. And, well, Lacey is running in 1 minute 26s. Schumacher's done a 1:23.6, so it could be that Hill is losing precious seconds, having to follow Lacey here. And it may have been better if it was, in fact, Hill that was coming in for this first stop and not Coulthard.
Indeed, because Damon Hill's last lap was a second slower than Michael Schumacher's. He is losing time. He does need to come in. He must make a stop soon. This is lap 39. And we'll know shortly, because we're coming up now to the chicane, which is the last corner, complex of corners, 2 of them, before the final bend. And it doesn't look as though Damon Hill is going to come in this lap from the way he challenged Lacey there with just a few yards to go to the end of the lap. So you're with Damon Hill, Lacey in front, and they are now 21 seconds ahead of Schumacher as Lacey fights for the lead. That's another lap completed. They've just passed the pit lane entrance. A wonderful race, the Grand Prix of Europe, and you're watching the front of it now with Jean Lacey into turn 1, just ahead of Damon Hill in second place in the Williams Renault. Coulthard is in third position, but he's 21 seconds behind these two. Schumacher is 22 seconds behind these two, therefore he's 1 second behind. And into the pits comes David Coulthard. Now, on goes the wheel nut, which has a special self-locking device to make sure it doesn't come off. Out comes the fuel hose, off goes Coulthard. And out goes Martin Brundle as down the pit lane goes Coulthard. And Damon Hill scrambles through, tries to take Jean Lacey, fails to do so, goes up on the grass, and he's lost part of his wing, I think. Yes! Damon is obviously going to have to come in for a new nose, and that has effectively ruined his Grand Prix of Europe as he challenged the race leader. His wing was trodden on. He's, of course, lacking downforce now. He's got to be very careful indeed not to spin off, because most of the downforce comes from the front wing, and he's going to lose at least 30 seconds, if not more. And that would put him at the very minimum down to 6th position on lap 40. And meantime, Schumacher's done the fastest lap of the race. Damon Hill comes in. Michael Schumacher goes through. Michael Schumacher has passed the pits complex. Now that's a really quick new nose cone going on to Damon Hill's car before the wheels are even on and the nuts tightened up. Lacey is now leading by about 15 seconds, and still Damon Hill sits in the pit lane as Gerhard Berger comes in from 4th position. Damon leaves the pits now. That's 32 seconds. You just saw his car exiting. So he went out of the pits as David Coulthard passed us. We'll keep a very careful eye on their relative positions.
Well, Gerhard Berger clearly with a problem. He's got his hand up, and that's going to put Berger further out of the equation. But what a tremendous disappointment for Damon Hill there. It would appear, although we haven't seen the replay of it, that he may have got too impetuous trying to get by Jean Lacey. Not a man who is recognised to be easy to overtake, and you shouldn't, and he shouldn't have underestimated how eager Lacey was going to be able to keep out in the lead. And we understand that in fact Hill was due to pit that lap anyway, so that really was a rather silly manoeuvre by Hill, unless we can see a replay to see. That's really what we need to do, to see how it all came about. But if Damon did simply try an opportunist move to get inside of Lacey, it was the wrong time to do it, and the price has been severe.
Well, things are looking pretty interesting at the front now, as Gerhard Berger's Ferrari still sits in the pit lane, and this has ended the Grand Prix of Europe for him in terms of finishing well up. Is he going out or is he going to retire? Alesi leading, of course, his teammate. And this is a retirement. Or is it? Yes, they're pulling Gerhard Berger's Ferrari back into the garage. So from 5th position out of the race goes the Ferrari. And John Alesi that you're looking at is leading the Grand Prix of Europe by just under 16 seconds from Michael Schumacher. And this is going to mean more championship points for Schumacher. Alesi crosses the line. Lap completed. And he's coming up behind the arrows, as in the background the Jordan Peugeot completes the right-hander, comes down the track towards us. And Gerhard Berger, obviously they've decided that they're not going to retire him. He would have been out of the cockpit. Now here's a replay of Damon Hill.
So let's have a look. Inside he goes of John Alesi, and Alesi moves right across. I must say, I think that looking from the on-board there, that Damon was entitled to look up the inside there and go, and it looks like Alesi was cut. Let's have another look. We're a bit tight to see, and that's Rubens Barrichello behind Damon Hill in the lead, and of course the front wing gone, and Hill coming back into the pits. Like to see a forward shot of that. That will give us a better idea of what happened there. But on the face of it, it looked as if Damon went for a gap that should have been there, but Alesi just chopped across. And Hill now is down into 4th place. He's 8.7 seconds behind his teammate Coulthard, who's 32 seconds behind Schumacher.
Yes, and the important thing for Damon Hill is that he is a further 3 World Championship points behind Schumacher, as Gerhard Berger gives it best, climbs out of the Ferrari to retire from the Grand Prix of Europe. And that's his 5th retirement of the year.
And certainly the confusion that there was there, and I'm sure that did come into it between Alesi and Damon Hill, was presented because of the back marker. Alesi went up to the inside of the back marker at, if not the last minute, certainly relatively late. And at that point, Hill had already committed himself to coming up the inside of Alesi.
Well, Damon giving it everything he can, but he's 9 seconds behind Coulthard. And even if the Scotsman lets him through, which I would rather doubt, that would still mean he's behind Michael Schumacher. There he is in 2nd place, 14 seconds behind Jean Alesi on lap 44 in this 67-lap Grand Prix of Europe. Schumacher currently, and as I've said before, anything can happen and probably will, but Schumacher currently is increasing his World Championship lead over Damon Hill from 17 points to 20 points, with 30 points left to be won after this race. It's not impossible, but it's getting more and more difficult, as it seems to do every race for Damon now, no matter how hard he tries. Gerhard.
Now, from those pit stops, the interesting thing was that Jean Alesi put in enough fuel, to my mind, to get to the end of the race with no further stops. And that's looking back at Mark Blundell's McLaren. We saw that retire a long time ago. However, we know that David Coulthard and Michael Schumacher were only stationary for 7.8 and 7 seconds respectively. That is long enough to get in about 54 litres of fuel. It flows at 9 litres a second. That's about 6 seconds worth of fuel. And by my calculations, that will take them through to round about lap 55, although that's pretty rough, I have to say. So we would expect them, by that account, certainly Coulthard and Schumacher, to have to come in for another pit stop. Now, it would have been logical for Williams to put enough fuel into Hill's car to get him right to the end of the race, knowing that it was going to take a long time to change that nose. And we didn't see how long the fuel pipe was on for, but lap 40 was well past half distance, and I would hazard a guess that Hill can now run like Alesi to the end of this race, whereas Schumacher and Coulthard will need to stop round about lap 55 for a further fuel load, their final stop, and that'll take them about another 25 seconds.
Meantime, Michael Schumacher is up behind Rubens Barrichello's Jordan. That's it in front of us as Barrichello laps a couple of his rivals. Schumacher does the same to one of them and goes inside the other. Barrichello is still in that position, but Schumacher has already lapped him once, and it's going to be twice soon, and Barrichello's in 5th position. So top 10 on lap 46, with Schumacher having made fastest laps for 3 laps in succession. He's just done another one. Alesi leads Schumacher by 12 laps. They're on lap 46. It's a 67 lap race. Schumacher goes past Barrichello to lap the 5th place man. Coulthard is 3rd, now 8 seconds ahead of Damon Hill, who is lapping quicker than his teammate. Damon Hill 4th, Rubens Barrichello 5th and lapped. You see him in the background. 6th is still Eddie Irvine, who did manage to keep going, notwithstanding that tap, to put it mildly, from Johnny Herbert. Johnny Herbert is behind the Jordan in 7th place. Brundle in the Ligier is 8th. Pedro Lamy in the Minardi is 9th. And Mika Salo in the Tyrrell is in 10th place. And that is Michael Schumacher. Well, he is certainly not just settling for 2nd place and the 6 World Championship points that go with it. He's pushing as hard as he possibly can in an effort to catch the Ferrari of previous race winner Jean Alesi, who could make it 2 victories for himself and Ferrari if he wins here at the Nürburgring. That would be a great victory at this historic circuit. But Michael Schumacher is pushing hard all the time, but the gap now is actually 13 seconds, or was at the end of the last lap. I'll soon be able to tell you what it is at the end of this one. You saw the caption there. It's 11.8 seconds, the gap between Jean Alesi on lap 47 and the man you're watching, Michael Schumacher, who leads David Coulthard by 33 seconds. Coulthard has pulled away a bit from Damon Hill. He's now nearly 10 seconds ahead of him. And Andrea Montemini hits a mechanic, the refuelling mechanic, as he exits away from the pit lane. And out of the race goes the second Sauber Ford. That is Jean-Christophe Bouillon, and you'll remember his teammate Heinz-Harald Frentzen had a coming together and went out of the race earlier on. Schumacher still pushing, lap 47. David Hill ahead of Johnny Herbert, who has been lapped. And you can see that there is now no real problem with the track surface. There are damp patches, but there are no really wet patches. You see all the mud and dirt on the side of Damon's Williams Renault, where he went off the track onto the grass into a muddy patch, attempting to pass Jean Alesi's Ferrari, which still leads on lap 48 out of 67. Alesi looking good for 10 points. Schumacher looking good for 6. Coulthard looking good for 4, Damon Hill looking good for 3, but that will not satisfy him at all. He's looking for 10 points, Damon Hill, and none for Schumacher, ideally, and that is an unattainable objective, I would say. You can make what you will of that, but obviously it's Damon Hill and Michael Schumacher showing their lines on the same corner. As the remorseless Jean Alesi. And if something happened to him in this race, it really would be the most appalling luck for a man who's had dreadful luck this season. He's retired from 5 races, and although he's had several podium positions, he's finished 3rd 5 times, and he's finished 2nd 3 times, and he's won one, of course. Now this is
right rear puncture there.
Rear puncture for the Tyrrell. That's the problem.
And talking about Tyrrells, learned that in fact it was Gabriele Tarquini who was the driver involved in that problem with Hill and Alesi there. It was Tarquini in the Tyrrell. He's deputising for Katayama while he recovers from that horrendous accident at the start of the Portuguese Grand Prix. And just reflecting back on that, I'm sure that what happened was that Damon Hill had the run on Jean Alesi. He was coming up the inside as Michael Schumacher really piles on the pressure.
And now Michael Schumacher is indeed piling on the pressure. Yet another fastest lap. brings him to within 4.5 seconds, and you can see it's declining of Jean Alesi. And when those two get together, you can really expect the sparks to fly. The massive German audience here, there's over 100,000 people here at the Nürburgring today. They can sense the fact that their hero is closing to try to take the lead from Alesi. Now, is he going to be held up by Delatraz in the Pacific? He got through. Niki Lauda on the right, Jean Todt in the background. And what is Delatraz doing? Doesn't matter what he's doing, it's what Alesi and Schumacher are doing that matters. Now, on the previous lap, which was lap 48, the gap was 4.4 seconds. There is Schumacher across the line, and John Alesi is being caught. Another fastest lap for Michael Schumacher. 1:21.596 brings him to within 2.8 seconds. You can see the gap now. And that's Damon Hill bumping over the chicane, but doing no damage. Fourth position, still over 9 seconds behind David Coulthard. But Michael Schumacher looks as though he can get the lead. He can win the Grand Prix of Europe in Germany and take another 10 points.
Well, we shouldn't forget that I believe that Schumacher has another pit stop to make. That means his car's running lighter than that of Jean Alesi at the moment, and probably about 1.5 seconds, 1 to 1.5 seconds worth of advantage in terms of lighter fuel load, if I'm correct. And we'll only know in about another 6 or 7 laps time as and when Schumacher needs to come back into the pits again. But let's just reflect, as I was going back to the most crucial incident perhaps of this race, and that was when Hill lost his nose bouncing over the curb. Hill, I think, legitimately had the run on Jean Alesi. He was alongside Alesi coming into that left-hand corner. Alesi then chopped across at the last minute in, if not avoidance, certainly to nip ahead of Gabriele Tarquini in the Tyrrell. And Alesi may or may not have seen Hill. He certainly should have done. Alesi closed the door. Hill, in good anticipation of that, rather than risk hitting Alesi, literally swerved left onto the grass at about 100 miles an hour, bouncing over, and that took his nose off.
And they're coming up to catch Mika Häkkinen and lap him again now. They being Alesi, who will now see Michael Schumacher in his mirrors. And the question is, will Alesi, the mercurial Jean Alesi, manage to keep it on the island when he sees Michael Schumacher looming large in his mirrors? That's Häkkinen, you saw just disappearing out of the picture in the McLaren. There is race leader Jean Alesi, right behind him Michael Schumacher, and it's now, I would guess, about 1 second between them. Michael Schumacher is much faster, but is that because he's got a lighter fuel load? We'll know, the Ferrari mechanics watching, and the Benetton people, and off goes Pedro Diniz in the 40 again. Not his day. But still, Michael Schumacher does not close right up on Jean Alesi. They're on their 51st lap now. If Alesi can just keep it going, and Schumacher does have to make another fuel stop, it could be another victory for Ferrari. Gerhard Berger has not won this year, of course. He won in Germany last year. Ferrari have just had the lone win from Jean Alesi in Canada. And that's Häkkinen chasing the Tyrrell. Alesi chasing Häkkinen, Schumacher chasing Alesi, and they are absolutely together within a couple of cars' lengths. And what is going to be crucial is whether Mika Häkkinen moves over and lets one or both of them through. And indeed, the Benetton mechanics are ready to receive somebody. I doubt that it's Johnny Herbert. And I notice also that they've got tyres and wheels there. So whoever's coming in is going to make more than a fuel stop as Alesi goes past Mika Salo. Schumacher goes past Mika Salo to lap him. Neither of them have caught, never mind, past Häkkinen.
Now, if this stops for Schumacher from Benetton, and I'm sure it is, Schumacher is 40 seconds ahead of David Coulthard. That will mean that he should come out 15 seconds ahead of David Coulthard if it's a 25-second stop. It will certainly be Schumacher's last stop, and I would expect it to be coming in now.
Here is Michael Schumacher coming into the pits from second position. And I remind you, as Jonathan has just told you, that he led David Coulthard in third position by nearly 41 seconds, so therefore he should be able to make a very leisurely pit stop. That's his left rear coming off. New left rear going on. Wheel nut done up. Cracking stop. His previous one was 7.7 seconds. This one 7.5 seconds. And Coulthard has still not gone through. So indeed, Michael Schumacher is going to rejoin in front of the Williams Renault of David Coulthard. And therefore, of course, his championship rival Damon Hill, who is still in fourth position. Michael Schumacher rejoins in second place. And things are now looking pretty good for Jean Alesi, but Schumacher will probably drive, well, he always drives sensibly, but he'll probably drive well within himself, knowing that to try to win would be very, very difficult indeed, but to stay ahead of Coulthard and Hill would not be so difficult. That is the Jordan of Eddie Irvine spinning at the chicane, and he's chasing Max Papis as he goes off. There's Irvine spinning on the left. Those bollards are filled with air, so don't worry about the car hitting them.
We can see some damage on the side of that Jordan that's obviously occurred sometime before, I assume, but that looked like a driving error there, simple driving error from Eddie Irvine.
Max Papis was 2 laps behind Eddie Irvine, in fact. We're on lap 54 as you watch the second place man, Michael Schumacher, pursuing Jean Alesi, who leads.
And of course that damage was done to Eddie Irvine almost certainly when Johnny Herbert and he collided some 20 laps ago. But we're at lap 54 now. This is a 68-67 lap race, so we've got some 14 laps to go. Now we need to keep a close eye on Michael Schumacher and his times. He's 22.3 seconds behind, and I believe in fact that Schumacher, on the same fuel load now as Jean Alesi, don't forget, they've all got enough fuel to get to the end of the race, bar, I think, David Coulthard, who I would expect to come in for a third stop. But what Schumacher will have is the benefit of better tyres. And the tyres are not a major factor here. The track's cold, they haven't degraded a great deal. Johnny Herbert's coming in now for his final stop. I think it's going to be a pretty close call thing between Schumacher and Alesi. I'd expect him to charge. On the other hand, by the time that Coulthard makes a further stop, he's 7 seconds ahead of Hill. Hill will end up being ahead of Coulthard.
Lap 54, race order. Jean Alesi leads Schumacher by 22 seconds. Coulthard is 17 seconds behind Schumacher in third place and 7 seconds ahead of Damon Hill, who is fourth. Damon Hill is away ahead of Rubens Barrichello, fifth, over a minute. Johnny Herbert was in sixth position until his pit stop there, and I suspect Eddie Irvine, oh no, he spun, so it could well be that Martin Brundle will be challenging in the closing stages of this race for another point for the Ligier team. But Jean Alesi keeps going. He's on his 55th lap now, 67 lap race. And it's my guess that Michael Schumacher, although he will push very hard, is going to be prepared to settle for second place in the Grand Prix of Europe, notwithstanding the fact that it's on his home track in front of his home crowd. He only lives about 60 miles away from here when he's in his German home. That is David Coulthard, who we haven't seen for a long time. He's in third place, 19 seconds behind Michael Schumacher, who, of course, I say of course, but he is catching Jean Alesi. Schumacher is now less than 20 seconds behind the Ferrari with 13 laps to go.
And Schumacher took 2.5 seconds off Jean Alesi on that last lap, so it doesn't look as if he's in any mood simply to get a solid second place. But this is the gap, the most crucial gap at the moment, Schumacher to Alesi. We've got 13 laps to go, 12 laps to go, and he's 19.7 seconds behind. Closing, it looks at a rate of about 2 seconds a lap.
In which case it's going to be mighty close at the end. Damon Hill, fourth place. He keeps on closing a bit on Coulthard, then dropping back a bit depending on the traffic. He'd got the gap down to 6 seconds on the previous lap. Lap 56 now. Schumacher 18 seconds, 18 seconds behind Alesi. Alesi leads, Schumacher second, Coulthard third. That is Alesi. Hill fourth, Barrichello has been lapped and is in fifth place. Only 4 of the competitors, 4 of the 24 who started, are still competing. Blundell is out, of course, as is Parnis, as is Frentzen, as is Roberto Moreno, Berger and Bouillon, and Montemini is still staggering on, but he's 9 laps behind.
There's the evidence, 17.9 seconds now. Schumacher, we're looking at him, is really on a charge and is certainly on target for getting right onto Alesi's tail by the end of this race. Though, as we know, getting by anybody, particularly Alesi, is a completely different story.
Well, you have to take your hat off to Michael Schumacher, an absolutely superb, determined, gifted competitor. The reigning world champion. This is his 66th Grand Prix, and he's been on the podium, first, second or third, in 33 races already. 50% of the races he's driven in, he's been on the podium, and he's going to be there again. Undoubtedly the class of the field. He could be the man that brings Ferrari right back to the forefront next year with their new V10 engine, if they decide to use it. Over the crest comes the Tyrrell. Over the crest comes the Benetton, goes ahead, and another fastest lap.
15.7 seconds the gap now. He's pulled out 2.2 seconds, and 2.2 seconds closer to Jean Alesi. This is going to be a tremendously exciting final 5 laps, I'd say, to the German Grand Prix.
Out of the hairpin. He's doing about 160 miles an hour here, speeding up to 170. That's race leader, Jean Alesi, coming up to turn 8 and through it. Now turn 9, the right-hander, speeds up to 175 miles an hour, approaching turn 10, the right-hander. Still 175 miles an hour, and he's going down into second gear for the chicane, from 175 to 60 miles an hour. Turn left, turn right, into turn 13, the last corner of the track. And you saw Michael Schumacher in the background exiting turn 9 as Alesi came out of turn 13. That's him going across the chicane. He's on his 58th lap now out of 67. And I remember he said in Canada for the last few laps he was literally in tears. Tears of emotion running down his visor and blinding him. He had to open his visor to get rid of the moisture. Well, he's not going to have any time for tears and crying in this race, because Michael Schumacher is getting closer and closer and closer. Another fastest lap. This is an incredible performance. 1 minute 21.180. But Schumacher's in amongst traffic.
And Schumacher's on target to being right on Alesi's tail with some 4 laps to go. So we've got an absolutely scintillating last 4 laps in store, as Schumacher will try to find a way past Jean Alesi. And the Ferrari, don't forget, has one of the most powerful engines in Formula 1. It's quick in a straight line, so it's not going to be any easy job.
Now, we're not seeing it, but there's another battle going on behind these two, between Coulthard and Hill. Coulthard is now under 4 seconds ahead of Damon Hill, who lapped 1.5 seconds faster than Coulthard on the previous lap. So he's going to be right up with his teammates, looking for 4 points for third position rather than 3 points for fourth, if Coulthard will let him through, or if he can get past the Scotsman. And I don't know what the answers to either of those situations are, but I do know now that Jean Alesi, coming up behind the McLaren Mercedes, is into his 59th lap as Michael Schumacher approaches turn 1. The gap was 13.2 seconds.
Well, don't forget, we're still waiting for David Coulthard to make this final stop that I believe he's got to make. He didn't take on a great deal of fuel at the previous one, but time's getting on. He's only got 7 laps to go in this race, so it's going to be a real splash and dash if indeed that is the case. I still think it will be, though.
Well, the Williams has just gone past me. There's Coulthard, and you can see how close Damon Hill is. There is Damon Hill in 4th position. Coulthard comes out of turn 2 as Hill goes into turn 1 and exits it. I said there were 2 races in one. The first is between Alesi and Schumacher, separated still by 13 seconds, but it's much, much closer for third position, and this is the man who is 4th, Damon Hill. And he can see David Coulthard in front of him. They are certainly not enemies, but they are not bosom friends, and there's a lot of needle between them in this particular race, because made no bones about the fact that he was going to stay ahead of Damon, and Damon made no bones about the fact that ideally he would have liked the Williams team in the situation where he is second to Schumacher in the championship, and he spins and goes off. David Hill out. It's a wet patch, and Hill is out of the Grand Prix of Europe, and therefore effectively, in my opinion, virtually out of the World Championship. Michael Schumacher is on 6 points. Damon Hill is going to score no points in this race, so that at minimum, as a thunderstruck David Brown looks at the monitor and Damon Hill walks away from the Williams, that means to say that there is going to be a minimum of an increase in the gap in the World Championship between Schumacher and Hill of 6 points from 17 to 23 with 30 points left. It's looking virtually impossible for Hill to win the World Championship. Here is a replay.
So round the hairpin, this is a second gear hairpin, 60 miles an hour. Hill's up through the gears. Second gear, third gear, fourth gear. Now this is a left-right that's taken nearly flat out. He will be feathering from 155 now down to about 140. Still in fifth gear. Left he goes. Round to the right on the power. We know he's pushing hard in his pursuit of Coulthard. Coming up, this was where he went inside a Lacey and had the problem over the curb with the front wings. Braking 170 down to third gear. Turning in 100 miles an hour. Let's see what he's doing here, and he just simply runs wide over the curbs, loses it on that slippery, painted, smooth white curb, bang into the tyres. He would have hit those tyres at around about 70 miles an hour. Let's have another look. Look, he gets onto that curb. See the water spray come off. Now he's on the wet track. He's lost the dry line. I'm afraid that is a fundamental driving error there from Damon Hill. The tyres doing a superb job at cushioning the impact, but really that should not have happened. Certainly not from somebody who's trying to challenge for the World Championship. And I'm afraid at the moment, 3 points. He's in fourth place, thrown away there. Damon simply let his car run too wide. He got on the power too early. He got on what he should have known was the slippery stuff, and it had the predictable result. He spun out of control, out of the race, into the tyres.
Now, concentrate your attention on the battle for the lead. That was Jean Alesi, who's coming up behind the Tyrrell of Martin Brundle. Martin Brundle is in 8th place and has already been lapped. And you'll notice that Jean Alesi has passed Mika Häkkinen. Meantime, Michael Schumacher has got the gap down to under 8 seconds. And incidentally, it means that the Jordan team, who have only had... Alesi goes off, but rejoins. And that will have closed the gap between himself and Schumacher. You can see, there it is. And incidentally, I must get this out, Barrichello and Irvine in the Jordans are up to 4th and 5th ahead of Johnny Herbert, who is 6th, and are therefore both in the World Championship points. Replay.
Let's have a look. He's got Martin Brundle ahead of him. Lacey goes wide, misses the first apex on the lock. Watch it bounce up over this verge here. The back comes around, he catches the slide. The air-filled bollard goes under the car. Let's look for any signs of any damage as he goes over the curb. I don't think there's going to be any. What there is going to be, though, and thereby goes Mika Häkkinen. What there is going to be, though, is dirt on those tyres. That's going to take another half a lap to catch up. This has given Schumacher the psychological advantage. There's no doubt about that.
6 laps to go, including the one they're on. Michael Schumacher can scent victory, and a desperate Jean Alesi will be striving to keep the Benetton Renault, which is really flying behind him. And Martin Brundle and Mika Häkkinen could decide this race, because both Alesi and Schumacher, there they are, first and second on lap 62 out of 67, have got to get past. That's Alesi running off at the chicane again, and you can see that gave Häkkinen the opportunity to repass him. And Alesi no longer had the possibility of having Häkkinen between himself and Schumacher. All he's got between himself and Schumacher now is a few yards of tarmac. And they're coming through to complete lap 62. So lap 63, 64, 65, 66 and 67 to go. And the race is well and truly on. Brundle there is 7th. Häkkinen is 8th. They're having a private race. Now, they won't want to slow down and let Alesi and Schumacher through, because Häkkinen is trying to take 7th place from Brundle, and Brundle is trying to stop him. So 7th, 8th, 1st, 2nd, with a full lap between them. A full lap and more, actually, but on the track it's a full lap here.
4 laps to go. Let's watch for some real racecraft from Michael Schumacher. His car is definitely faster, and he is faster than Jean Alesi at the moment, probably by a second or 2 seconds. but he's got to get by. He's got to get by cleanly. He needs those points too to stay ahead in the championship battle. He wants to win this German Grand Prix there in front of his home crowd. Well, the Grand Prix of Europe, but it is in Germany for the second time this year, and he'll be desperately eager to do that. But he can't afford to come unstuck. He can't afford to finish this race if he really wants to try and wrap this championship up.
Well, look at the pressure on John and Lacey, and you'll notice that neither of them are closing out much on Mika Häkkinen. We're with Schumacher. And they're coming up to the last corner of lap 63. Lap 64, 65, 66 and 67 to go. P2 goes out to Michael Schumacher. You are 7/10 of a second behind Lacey, but he certainly is not now. So there's Bader, Brundle, Häkkinen. 3 cars have got to be passed by Lacey and Schumacher. Brundle passes Bader, Häkkinen passes Bader. Don't forget they're fighting for 7th place, and Lacey dives through, and Schumacher dives through. Bader must have wondered what hit him. 4 cars go past. 1, 2, 3, 4, and Schumacher is going for it. And Lacey resists. V12 Ferrari, V10 Renault powered Benetton, and it is very even. Lap 64 with Schumacher. Lacey ahead. But ahead of Lacey is Häkkinen. Ahead of Häkkinen is Brundle still. Look how much they've all pulled away from Luca Bader, who, by the way, is in 11th place, now 3 laps behind. What a sensational finish to the Grand Prix of Europe. We're riding with the home boy, Michael Schumacher, world champion, leading the world championship. He won at Hockenheim, the German Grand Prix. This is the Nürburgring, Germany. And this is great motor racing at the front, the like of which we haven't seen for a long time. Michael Schumacher sees number 27 on the rear wing of Jean Alesi's Ferrari. What a famous number that is. And Brundle and Häkkinen are still ahead. Alesi, you see, has got to remember where Schumacher is when he plans how to get ahead of Häkkinen and Brundle, if indeed he can. This is lap 65. There's only 2 laps to go after this one. Alesi, Schumacher, Coulthard 3rd, Barrichello 4th, Hill is out, Irvine is 5th, Herbert is 6th, and Schumacher has a look. Now, can he get through on the inside? Alesi resists him. He's coming up to a left-hand bend, so he's got the inside line. What a struggle. Brundle goes past Diniz, or tries to, and still Alesi has got this problem, and off goes Häkkinen, and off goes the 40 in front of him.
Well, I've heard of moving out of the way for the leaders, but that was pretty ridiculous.
And again, now we're with Michael Schumacher. This is lap 65. 2 laps to go at the end of this one. And Schumacher... Yes! Michael Schumacher takes the lead in the Grand Prix of Europe, and the Benetton team go berserk with delight. Now I think he will pull away from Jean Alesi, who will feel deflated, bitterly disappointed and enormously impressed. The psychological pressure, I think, will get to the Ferrari driver. Indeed, it has done so already. And Michael Schumacher has got this lap and the next one to go between himself and the checkered flag for a glorious 7th win this year.
What a brilliant outbraking manoeuvre by Michael Schumacher around the outside of Jean Alesi. Both those cars teetering on the absolute limit as they brake from 185 miles an hour right down to 50 miles an hour for that chicane. But great credit to both drivers. Let's have another look. Alesi doing everything he possibly can right up the inside. He's not going to give that place up, but it's good, fantastic, in fact, clean racing. Those cars are within inches of each other at that sort of speed. Absolutely fantastic. What a marvellous way to end this Grand Prix of Europe here. And Alesi, though, well, let's have a summary of what's gone on. Alesi started off on slicks. He made the bold decision to do so, and it really has paid off. I doubt he'd be in the position he was if he hadn't taken that. But it needed Alesi's tremendous skill at driving in marginal slippery conditions to make full use of that tactic. It didn't work for McLaren. Michael Schumacher, though, has really demonstrated today that he is a deserving world champion for the second time. He's driven beautifully, he's made no mistakes, he's hounded a Lacey, he's got by a Lacey, he's challenged when he didn't need to have challenged for his world championship situation. Absolutely fantastic from Michael Schumacher and the Benetton team. Damon Hill, I'm afraid, has basically thrown it away here today. He started on the second position of the grid alongside David Coulthard, poleman. He took a rather too opportunist move, although I'm sure he had severe words to say to Jean Alesi. At that time, when he lost his nose cone, he then went off on his own. David Coulthard, a lonely race in third place there, clearly not making another stop, but he was in the spare car.
No words of mine can say how brilliant this drive of Michael Schumacher's has been. It has virtually guaranteed him the World Championship of 1995 in his home country, because he will now be 27 points ahead of Damon Hill with only 30 to be won. And that makes it a virtual impossibility. Not impossible, but virtually so. So, Michael Schumacher virtually home for a seventh glorious win, his second in Germany this year. That passing move when he went past Jean Alesi was classic Formula One at its very best. This is the chicane. He is now approaching and into the last corner, and Michael Schumacher exits the last corner of the Nürburgring to win gloriously the Grand Prix of Europe and virtually make certain the 1995 World Championship, with Jean Alesi in second place, just 2.7 seconds behind him. David Coulthard should finish in third position, some 35 seconds behind Schumacher, the only other driver to go the whole race distance of 67 laps. Rubens Barrichello is going to be in fourth position with Johnny Herbert fifth, so Benetton will have increased their lead in the Constructors' Championship as David Coulthard there finishes in third place, because both the Benettons are in the top six. 10, 10, 10 glorious points for Michael Schumacher and 2 points for Johnny Herbert, 12 points in all, and Benetton were 20 points ahead of Williams in the Constructors' Championship when this race began, and David Coulthard just gets 4 points for finishing in third position. Well, there you see. What a driver, what a man, what a car, and what an engine, because Renault have done it again. And that's the sad, sorry commentary for Damon Hill, who waves despondently, but has seen the World Championship when he finished second to Schumacher in such controversial circumstances in Australia last year, slip nearly out of his fingers here at the Nürburgring this year. So, there is Schumacher, and David Coulthard comes up near him, having finished in third. So, at the Nürburgring, the Grand Prix of Europe, won by Michael Schumacher, Jean Alesi second, David Coulthard third, fourth Barrichello, fifth Johnny Herbert, and sixth Eddie Irvine. And Damon Hill sportingly giving a thumbs up to Michael Schumacher, ever the gentleman. But back in the London studio, Steve Ryder has been watching this race with the great world champion, Nigel Mansell. What did they think about it?
In Australia, but today's drive will go down as one of his greatest. He racks them up, and the European Grand Prix win here at the Nürburgring will certainly be one that is remembered by everybody that was here, and hopefully all of you who've been watching it today on Eurosport. Michael Schumacher the winner then from Jean Alesi. A superb performance from him today, but it just didn't quite work out. David Coulthard third, Rubens Barrichello fourth, then Johnny Herbert and Eddie Irvine taking the final points. There you can see further down the list the final finishers, and Jean-Denis Delatraz finishing for Pacific. A good performance from him, remember, very inexperienced, celebrating his birthday today, so good to get it through to the end of the race. There the retirements, some notable retirements. The most notable, of course, was Damon Hill.
Well, there's going to be euphoria here in the Nürburgring, because once Michael Schumacher makes his way up onto the winner's podium, the 100,000 plus fans that have come to see this are going to go ballistic.
Look at the gap in the championship, a huge gap now for Schumacher, but look at the battle for second. It's not that far apart, just 12 points between Hill and Coulthard. Not far behind either is Johnny Herbert. So it's all getting pretty close in the battle for second and third places in the title.
Well, Michael Schumacher still numb with this result, still absolutely almost walking on air, and Flavio Briatore, delight, absolute delight on his face, because his man has done once again something in a sense against the odds, because clearly the two Williams Renault of Coulthard and Hill were the class of the field, but conditions on the day took the race to Michael Schumacher, took it to Jean Alesi in the Ferrari, and once again for David Coulthard, but in particular for Damon Hill, they just must wonder, how are they going to beat this German driver? Even if he moves to Ferrari, you know, the guy is clearly head and shoulders above everybody in Formula One.
We had a quick look at the constructors' points just a moment ago. Benetton and Renault keeping their lead over Williams Renault. There, the congratulations for Michael. Now that's interesting. Schumacher and Alesi, what a tremendous battle they put on. What a great show they put on. They both finished. They both got through to the checkered flag. Great motor racing.
Well, let's again look at the most crucial moment in this race. Michael Schumacher, Jean Alesi, wheel to wheel into the Vidal chicane. Alesi over the curb. Schumacher the long way round, almost interlocking. Oh, they did in fact touch contact on the left side pod. We didn't see that from the other angle, but there we do see it. But once Schumacher got himself to that position, in spite of the contact, there was nothing that Jean Alesi was going to be able to do. And in fact, it's a miracle that both of them not only got into the chicane, but got out with such little contact as we saw there.
And look at the delight from the Benetton crew. I mean, that really was such an achievement for Schumacher, and to come through to take the victory there, well, remarkable stuff. David Coulthard, another podium finish for him in third place today, and well, it'll be interesting to hear his comments. It certainly looked as though that spare car was not quite to his liking compared with the car, his race car that he's been driving all weekend. We'll have to wait and see to hear his comments. And for Damon Hill, of course, disappointment today, but he put on a great show as well, John. That battle that he had with Schumacher earlier on in the race, that was great viewing as well.
Absolutely. I mean, clearly that car and Damon Hill in it were by far the quickest combination on the circuit. But you know, these races where you got a wet track that's slowly going dry, with a variety, a multitude of options in terms of pit strategy, stops for tires, refueling. Benetton, Schumacher going for 3 stops looked very marginal, but at the end of the day it proved to be the right one. Contrast that with Jean Alesi in second, clearly at different points in the race when you've got full of fuel and maximum fuel on board for Alesi on new tires. He couldn't run at the kind of pace he did just before he made that single pit stop. But what a magnificent Grand Prix, and what an outstanding drive from Michael Schumacher and Jean Alesi.
So they make their way onto the podium, and there the cheer for Michael Schumacher. We can look from our commentary box, and there, look at him leaping on that top step. Well, it's his second win in Germany, and what a great achievement.
Well,
German national anthem, followed by the British. Fantastic. The anthem for Michael Schumacher, the anthem for the Benetton team.
And I just wonder, is this victory here at Nürburgring in the European Grand Prix, in fact, a sweeter victory than that back in August, end of July, in Hockenheim? It appears to me Michael Schumacher really feels this is one very special win in a career where we've seen so many wins. Now Michael Schumacher moves on to 17 victories, the most winning driver currently in Formula One.
Great achievement, and the trophy for Michael Schumacher. Flavio Briatore looking suitably delighted as well.
Well, he's talking to his driver for next year, and I'm sure all the help that Schumacher has enjoyed at Benetton, Alesi will begin to realise.
So Michael Schumacher on the top step, and we will be joining the press conference to hear what the drivers have to say after that incredible race. So we'll take a break and come back with the press conference. Stay with us on Eurosport. Little look back at some of the incidents of this race, and that incident, a key one of course, the exit of Damon Hill from the event, and this, the battle between Alesi and Schumacher.
Yes, I mean, the height of tension at this particular point, when Michael Schumacher passed Jean Alesi in that chicane, absolutely unbelievable. There was very light contact, but inevitably it had to happen. But when you're battling for the lead, I mean, just one of the greatest finishes to any Grand Prix. Ross Brawn, Flavio Briatore, emotion just overflowing from Flavio Briatore. The only thing left, I think, at Ferrari is, in fact, to say to Flavio Briatore,